will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers starting on April 2nd. It may be a little bit of an adjustment period, but our farmers are going to have a field day right now. So to our farmers, have a lot of fun. I love you too.
They planted the fields. They worked the land. They waited for rain. But when harvest came, there were no buyers, no contracts, no checks. Somewhere between Washington and Beijing, the lifeline that once sustained American farms was severed, and no one seems to be reattaching it. What began as a political stunt evolved into a global standoff, and now it's a full-scale economic disaster sweeping across America's farm belt. From Nebraska to Georgia, from Texas to the Great Lakes, the fallout is no longer theoretical. It is real, and it is brutal. This isn't about tariffs on steel or battles over intellectual property anymore. This is about crops rotting in storage. This is about unsellable cattle. This is about family farms staring down extinction. America's trade war has detonated, and its first casualty is the American farmer. Before we go further, hit that like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm and show your support. Let's start in the fields of Kansas. Just 6 months ago, U.S. sorghum was being exported to China in record volumes. Now those shipments have collapsed by 95%. In the first 2 months of this year, China bought just 78,000 metric tons of American sorghum, down from over 1.4 million during the same period the year prior. That's not a decline, that's annihilation. Sorghum farmers, many still recovering from previous tariff clashes, are now sitting on massive unsold stockpiles. Silos are full. Prices are falling. And worse, there's no backup market. China had been buying 90% of America's exported sorghum. With that demand gone, there's no one left to sell to. And it's not just sorghum. China has slapped tariffs of more than 125% on nearly all American agricultural imports. Welcome back to Squawk Box. We have breaking news overnight. China is raising tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%. Beijing says it will no longer match U.S. tariff hikes because, at this point, American imports are unmarketable. They're calling it, quote, a joke. A nun joins us live from Beijing. What's the latest? Not funny, though. Soybeans, corn, wheat, pork, cotton, poultry, even dairy. The message from Beijing is crystal clear. American goods are no longer welcome. The consequences have been immediate and catastrophic. Though Beijing later announced it would exclude certain products like soybeans and pork from its additional tariffs, the damage was already done. The Xinhua news agency cited government sources saying China is a major market for U.S. agricultural goods and hopes the U.S. will honor its commitments, take concrete steps, and create favorable conditions for cooperation. But on the ground, prices are tanking. Soybean futures have plummeted. Corn is soft. Wheat is facing a supply glut. The U.S. harvest has become an economic time bomb. And within the past 30 minutes, the European Union has approved its first countermeasures against President Trump's tariffs. Joining China and Canada, the EU will impose 25% duties on a range of American imports in retaliation for the U.S. metals tariffs. They're still evaluating responses to the proposed auto and border levies, but the new tariffs will take effect starting April 15th. Meanwhile, China is moving on, signing long-term trade deals with Brazil, Argentina, Russia. Anywhere but here. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button to show your support for the channel. Now let's talk retaliation, not from China this time, but from the European Union. In response to U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum, the European Commission is planning a massive counterattack, 25% tariffs on a range of iconic American farm exports, including soybeans, processed pork, peanuts, and California's prized almonds. Why target farmers? Because they're politically sensitive. Because they've been loyal. Because they're vulnerable. And the blows keep coming. China hasn't just stopped buying, it has started blocking. This week, Beijing imposed a full ban on poultry imports from several major U.S. producers. Citing safety concerns, Chinese customs effectively shut down a billion-dollar segment of the American chicken export market overnight. In New York, a dairy farmer was hit with a $2,200 increase in the cost of livestock feed. Why? Because the feed came from Canada, and thanks to new tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on Canadian imports, that price hike is now the farmer's burden. He can't raise milk prices. He can't switch suppliers. He's stuck. And he's not alone. Across the country, farmers are discovering that the tariffs they believed would hurt foreign exporters are instead hitting home. Prices are rising on fertilizer, machinery, seed, and feed, the basic inputs of their livelihoods. At the same time, the prices they're getting for their crops are falling. It's a squeeze, and it's getting tighter by the day. The White House has acknowledged the damage. Officials have confirmed they're considering another farm relief package, potentially a multi-billion-dollar bailout aimed at preventing widespread bankruptcies in rural America. But here's the problem. Aid is not access. Farmers don't want government checks. They want customers. They want trade. Because when the market disappears, so does the future. In Iowa, corn growers are planting fields knowing they may lose money on every acre. In Illinois, soybean farmers are hesitant to sign forward contracts because prices are too unstable. In Kentucky, some farmers are wondering if it's even worth harvesting a crop no one may buy. Meanwhile, in Washington, the strategy remains unclear. President Trump insists the tariffs are working, that they're bringing other nations to the negotiating table. But so far, all they seem to be bringing is retaliation. This week, China's Ministry of Commerce bluntly declared that U.S. agricultural products have no place in our market, and they meant it. While there have been signals of goodwill, with Chinese firms reportedly inquiring about U.S. agricultural goods, the bigger picture remains grim. The new tariffs have effectively priced American products out of China. Even if buyers were interested, they can no longer afford them. And so other suppliers are stepping in. Brazil's soybean exports are booming. European meat producers are gaining ground. Russia is signing long-term wheat contracts with Asian buyers. These are not temporary shifts. These are structural changes, and once trade routes move, they rarely move back. It took decades for the United States to build its global agricultural dominance. It has taken less than a year to dismantle it. And perhaps the most painful truth, it was avoidable. Farm organizations are sounding the alarm. The American Soybean Association, the National Farmers Union, the American Farm Bureau Federation, they're all warning that this situation is not sustainable. The National Farmers Union is now supporting legislation to limit the executive branch's tariff powers. The bill would require congressional approval for sweeping trade actions, citing the deep, lasting harm to American agriculture. Across the Midwest, backlash is building. In town halls, in local news outlets, in trade association meetings, farmers who once supported the administration are beginning to change their tone. Because now, it's not about politics. It's about survival. One Kentucky farmer told reporters this week, "It's too early to lock in a loss, but that's what we're being asked to do." Another in Nebraska said, "We don't want bailouts. We want trade deals." But as of now, no new agreements are on the table. Instead, more countries are threatening more tariffs, more bans, more restrictions. And with every passing hour, the pressure mounts. Commodity traders are pulling back. Equipment dealers are slowing shipments. Lenders are growing wary of repayment risks. Rural banks are bracing for defaults. This is no longer just a trade dispute. This is a rural economic crisis. And perhaps the most disturbing part, it's invisible to much of the country. While the headlines fixate on tech stocks, international summits, and global tensions, the quiet collapse of the American farm is unfolding, largely unnoticed. But not here. We're watching. We're listening. And we'll keep reporting. What happens next depends entirely on what Washington chooses to do or refuses to do. Because if the current strategy stays the course, the consequences won't just be economic. They'll be generational. And the question won't be whether farmers can survive the trade war. It will be whether they can ever recover from it.